In this video, we will be reviewing preferences for accounts for CenterPoint Business. To access your account's preferences screen, you'll go to File, Preferences, and Accounts. These are all of the account preferences we will be going over in this video today. First, let's go over the tabs that are located at the top of your preferences screen. The first tab is your Current Setting tab. I will click on Account Settings so you can see what I'm referring to. So this Current Settings tab is simply just displays the settings that are currently being used at this time. The next tab is your Global Settings tab. The global level is typically used when your system is in a network. The global level affects all databases on the network. This allows a network administrator to set up preferences just once, and they will be used for all databases and all users within this network setting. The next tab here is our application setting. The application level is used for all databases that will have all the same preference. So CenterPoint is one application. If you have 5 databases inside CenterPoint and you set a preference at application level, it will set for all of those databases because CenterPoint's one application. The next tab would be your database level. If you have multiple databases and these preferences need to be set differently per database, you'd be setting your preferences at a database level. So when I open up database 1, these preferences would be different than database 2. Your next tab is users. The Users tab is not available for all preferences, and it is only available when you have set up users and security. This would mean that whenever you do have access to the User tab, that a user can set their own preference for their database and system. Now that we have reviewed the preferences task level up here for the current global application, database, and user, let's go ahead and start with our actual preferences. So under accounts, we're going to go to account settings. This account setting allows you to control how the numbers display on your setup accounts and accounts screen. If you choose to put pound signs in, these are just placeholders for the characters that are numbers 0 through 9, and that would also be required. So if I put 4 pounds in here, when I go into my setup accounts and account screen, I will have to enter in 4 numbers. If I only enter in 3, it will put a leading 0 before my first 3 numbers appear. If my numbers are not required and I want to have them just as an actual placeholder, and I have some accounts that are 2 digits and some accounts that are 4 digits, you can come in here and you can actually enter in 9s, and these will be placeholders. And these are not required in order for you to type in a number on your setup of accounts and accounts screen. If you decide to come in here and your accounts do require 2 digits in the front, so pound, pound, and you guys normally have a dash and then 3 numbers. When we go to set up accounts and accounts, the dash will automatically display. You can type in your first 2 numbers, and then when you type in your last 3 numbers, it will go behind the dash. In this field, if you decide to put a capital A, it is going to be a placeholder that is required for letters A through Z, capital or lowercase, and numbers 0 through 9. If you decide to put a lowercase a, this will be a placeholder that is not required, and it would follow the same stipulations as the capital A. So it's going to allow letters of lowercase a through Z, capital A through Z, and numbers 0 through 9, but these would not be required. If you decide to put a question mark in your format field down here, it is a letter placeholder, so it will only hold the placeholder that is not required for letters of A through Z, lowercase and uppercase. So if I wanted to have some accounts that might start with a letter, I would put a question mark because it's not required. And if I have numbers that are required, then I can go ahead and put my pound sign, I can put my 9, I can put a lowercase or a capital A, depending on what your stipulations are for your setup of accounts. And the last option on this list would be the and sign. This is for any characters, including spaces. So if I just want to have numbers and letters and special characters and add spaces, I would just be putting as many and signs as I need in my bar right here. Also in my accounts, I do have the option to display my accounts as a flat list, which just displays all of the accounts in a list format versus it being in a tree where we'd have assets and we'd have to open that up, expenses, open that up, so on and so forth. So I am going to show you the differences between those. So I'm going to say display as a flat list and say yes and save. I will go into setup, accounts, and accounts. And this is displaying as a flat list. If I don't want it to display in this manner, I'm going to close out. I'm going to go into File, Preferences, Accounts, Account Settings. I'm going to go back to my application tab, my database tab where I was before, and I'm going to say no. So this will now put it in a tree format. I'm going to press Save, and then I'm going to go back into Setup, Accounts, Accounts, and this is the tree format I was referring to. If I need to see my list of assets, I can choose the plus sign beside assets, or I actually can right click and I can expand whatever one I am on at this time based off your right click option. If I wanted to expand all of them, I can right click here and expand all groups. I can right click and collapse all groups. The next account preference we're going to go over is account item lists. When we choose this preference, we have the ability to expand all accounts and items when loading our account and item screen. If I decide to say yes to this preference, when I go under Setup, Accounts and Accounts, all of the items that are listed under each of those accounts, like assets, liabilities, expenses, will all be displayed for me, and I do not have to open up the plus sign beside those names. If I choose to say no, these will not display in that manner. It will just show assets, liabilities, and expenses, and I will have to open up the plus side beside those particular accounts. I will show you this. So if we say yes here, I'm going to press save. I'm going to go into setup, accounts, and accounts. And as I required it to do, it is opening up each of those plus signs for me automatically. I do not have to go do it. I will close out of this screen and we will change the preference to no. So File, Preferences, my account item list, the database tab, and I'm going to say no, and I'm going to save that. Then I'm going to go to Setup, Accounts, and Accounts. And as it was before, they are all collapsed, and I would have to physically go in here and open exactly what I was looking for. Let's go back to the Preferences screen. The next item on our list under the accounts is distributions. So this setting will allow me to have the distribution box display automatically when I go in to do a general journal entry. If I want that distribution box to display automatically, I would set this preference to yes. So when I go into my general journal to do a general journal, the distribution box will automatically appear. If I do not want it to do that, I'm going to change this preference to no. I'm also going to show you how this works as well. So I'm going to say that yes, I want this distribution box to automatically be checked and display. I'm going to press save. If I go to processes, general journal entries, this account does have a distribution set up on it, and as you see here, it is automatically checked for me. I'm going to now go back and change that preference to no. So File, Preferences, Account Settings, and Distributions, Database tab, and I'm going to say no, I do not want that box automatically checked. I'm going to go into my processes again, general journal entry, type in that same account. And as you see here, if I want this to have a distribution on it, I can then at this time check mark it. But as default, it is not going to check mark the box for me. It would be a manual check for any of the accounts that have a distribution set up on them. Let us exit out of here, and we're going to go back into our preferences, and we're going to now review the inactive accounts. And I'm going to go to the database tab. In your database, if you have inactive accounts and you have a recurring or a recalled transaction and you want it to warn you that you are using an inactive account, you would go into this preference here and drop this down. You can display a warning to let you know that in this recurring or recalled transaction an inactive account is being used, or you don't need to display a warning at all. The same thing applies for any inactive accounts that is selected in a transaction. If you are in a transaction and you go to the lookup and you have selected to see every single account, you might be choosing an inactive account. If you want the system to warn you that you are selecting an inactive account, you're going to change this preference here. You can say I wanted to display the warning of using an inactive account, or you can also say I don't want it to display a warning at all. The next account preference is internal accounts. I'm still on the database tab. Use internal accounts. An example of using internal accounts is if inside your database you have multiple companies, and within those multiple companies you need to do some type of transfer. If it's maybe from an internal bank to an internal bank, maybe you guys sell some items and each company sells to each other and you need to do that kind of transaction, you can use internal accounts. If you choose to use internal accounts, you would change this to yes. Once you start to create a new account, there's going to be an option at the bottom that says internal account, and you would select that is an internal account. If you make an internal account and you do not want it to display on some of your reports, you do have the option to not show your internal accounts on financial statements. If this needed to go out to an accountant that doesn't really need to see your internal account activity because you're managing those books yourself, you can choose reports to not show those internal accounts. After you've created internal accounts and you are using them, if you decide to unselect and go back to no, you will get a warning that you are trying to turn off to use the internal accounts. And the last preference under accounts is multiple bank accounts. This preference is set for when you are doing an entry and you have multiple bank accounts in that entry. Do you want the system to warn you that you are using multiple bank accounts in the entry? If you want the system to actually send you a warning to let you know that you're using multiple bank accounts, drop this down and say no. So this will give you the warning that you are using multiple bank accounts. If you do not want to have that warning, you need to select yes. So when you're doing the entry that has those multiple bank accounts, if you have it selected to yes, you will not receive a warning message. Once you have set all your preferences to your liking, you can go ahead and press save, and that will update all of your account preferences. In this video, we went over preferences for accounts for CenterPoint Business.